Howdy again everyone, I love autofocus 50mm f1.4 full frame lenses. The first lens I ever bought was one of them, and with the arrival of the new Viltrox option a couple of days ago, I thought I'd take a look at 4 of the most popular ones available today on Sony E mount. The Sigma lens is also available for L mount cameras, and I also wouldn't be surprised at all if the Viltrox lens makes its way over to Nikon Z mount eventually. The cheapest of these 4 is the new Viltrox lens at $549 or £525 here in the UK, which is a positive bargain. The most expensive by far is the official Sony option at $1,449 or £1,500. The other premium option is the Sigma DG-DN Art lens at $939 or £849, and one of the oldest lenses here is the Samyang AF 50mm f1.4 Mark II, which is $649 or £599, although it actually only came out in 2022, so all 4 of these lenses are pretty modern. This will be a pretty in-depth comparison video, but I won't be covering every last detail of the 4 lenses. Take a look in the description below for links to my full reviews if you want to see them. These lenses all have a similar size, although the Viltrox lens is surprisingly big and heavy at 800 grams or a little under 2 pounds. The Samyang is very lightweight at only 420 grams. The Sony comes next at only 516 grams, and the Sigma is 670 grams. The Viltrox, Sony and Sigma lenses all feel really solid and tough, with excellent build quality and aperture rings that can be set to click or to turn smoothly for video work. While the Samyang lens is the lightest in weight, it also has the most plastic in its build quality and is the only one not to feature an aperture ring, although its manual focus ring is at least customizable. When it comes to focus breathing for video makers, the Sony lens here and the Sigma lens both show surprisingly strong breathing when you change focus. Interestingly, it is the much less expensive Viltrox and Samyang lenses which don't really show focus breathing, so some video makers might find that pretty important information to know. It's a surprise that the most expensive lenses in this comparison video struggled with this quite so much. Let's take a look at autofocus performance, and I tested all these lenses in autofocus continuous mode on my Sony cameras for best performance. The Sony and the Sigma lenses were really fast here, even when shooting indoors without the best light, which is impressive. The Samyang and the Viltrox lenses both worked at a much more moderate speed, essentially matching each other, so anyone doing work requiring high intensity autofocus might need to simply get their wallets out here. Overall, it won't surprise you to know that the best lenses to handle were the more expensive Sony and Sigma options, whose lens bodies feel fantastic and have the fastest autofocus. The Viltrox lens also features very high build quality, that's lovely too, but unfortunately it really is quite big and heavy in comparison, so you'd have to be prepared for that. The Samyang lens feels cheap and cheerful compared to the other 2, but it is super lightweight. But, like I said before, the 2 cheaper lenses, oddly enough, did offer the lowest breathing when focus pulling, so video makers might want to take a note of that. Alright, let's move on and look at image quality now. All these test images were taken on Sony cameras with in-camera corrections turned on, and I'm zooming each image in to the 42 megapixel level simply for consistency. The expensive Sony lens here is the sharpest, with the best contrast in the middle, although the Viltrox lens is close behind. The Sigma lens is looking sharp as well, but it suffers from some magenta colour fringing, and the Samyang lens is the softest. Stop the lenses down to f2, and all 4 look absolutely excellent now in the middle. Let's open them back up to f1.4 and take a look in the image corners then. Alright, now it's the Sony and the Sigma lenses who are taking the lead. Both of them are showing great sharpness from corner to corner. I'd say that the Sigma lens perhaps just has a tiny edge in resolution in those corners actually, but the Sony lens has perhaps just a tiny edge in contrast. The Viltrox lens comes in 3rd place with a decent enough performance, whereas the older Samyang lens is a bit soft in those image corners. Stop down to f2 and all 4 lenses are looking about the same actually, except that their corners are generally brighter, and the Sigma lens shows excellent contrast now. Stop down to f2.8 and the Viltrox and Samyang lenses show only small improvements, but at f4 the Viltrox lens is looking a bit sharper now, and here are all 4 lenses when stopped down as far as f8. So overall, I'd say that the best is the Sony lens, but the Sigma lens is right behind, snapping at its heels with barely any difference in image quality. Then comes the Viltrox lens, and the Samyang lens comes in 4th place. Let's turn off in-camera corrections now and take a look at distortion and vignetting. Interestingly, it's the cheaper lenses which seem to perform the best here. The Sony and Sigma lenses have strong vignetting and strong pincushion distortion to deal with. The Viltrox lens projects a little barrel distortion, and the Samyang lens's lines look actually pretty straight. They all suffer from heavy vignetting at f1.4 though. Stop down to f2.8 and the corners brighten on all 4 lenses, but again, it's the most expensive Sony and Sigma lenses where the corners are still the darkest. So if you care a bit more about that than you do about image sharpness, then actually the cheaper lenses would be for you. Next, close-up image quality. All 4 lenses get you similarly close to your subject. The Sigma lens perhaps gets a touch closer than the others, and the Viltrox lens perhaps a touch further. At f1.4, all 4 lenses have similarly terrible close-up image quality though. The cheaper Viltrox and Samyang lenses are probably the worst. Stop down to f2, and the more expensive Sony and Sigma options pull well ahead though, and at f2.8 it's the same distinction, with the Viltrox and Samyang lenses only just catching up now. Next, work against bright lights. The Viltrox lens displays a large flaring artifact here, but at least it looks nice and soft. The Sony lens shows flaring too, which is smaller but more opaque. The Sigma lens also displays only one flaring artifact, which is slightly bright, but it's probably the best lens so far. And finally, the Samyang lens shows a bright flare around the light source itself and some obvious reflections here and there. They're all performing just okay here, none is really standing out as particularly the best or worst. Now let's take a look at the bokeh of each lens. The Viltrox lens's autofocus backgrounds are pretty gorgeous. Autofocus backgrounds are really soft, and specular highlights don't have any weird outlining or internal patterning to them. Nice, although they do have the usual cat's eye shape to them in the image corners. How about the Sony lens? Similar. Its backgrounds are also lovely and smooth, with no visible outlining in virtually all situations. The only thing to note here is a bit of a cat's eye shape, again to specular highlights in the image corners. And the Sigma lens, well, the same, really. It is great to see that when spending extra money on a 50mm f1.4 optic, not only do you get more autofocus backgrounds, but the lenses are better designed and now good enough for those backgrounds to look lovely and smooth compared to older or cheaper optics. And the Samyang lens also looks fantastic in this area. I really couldn't notice much difference in my sample pictures between the 4 lenses here, and I did look quite carefully. And, well, that is where I'm going to wrap things up. If you'd like to know even more details about these lenses, like their coma levels and sunstars and longitudinal chromatic aberration or anything like that, then do take a look in the description below for links to my full reviews. Overall, all of these 4 lenses offer stunning images with beautifully out-of-focus backgrounds. The key variances are in build quality and in overall sharpness. The Samyang lens is the only one I don't think I would quite recommend, simply because the Viltrox option offers more for $100 less money. So Samyang might need to update this one now really, although at least it is nice and lightweight. Remember, the Viltrox lens weighs nearly twice as much as that Samyang option. The Sony lens might be the best of the bunch, but is it really worth that much more than the Sigma, which is almost as good? The 2 best value for money lenses, I think, are the Sigma and the Viltrox. The Sigma is awesome and priced just right, I think, whereas the Viltrox isn't quite up to the same level but still offers you quite a lot. That has been a story of 2025 in my opinion, by the way. Sigma and Viltrox crushing it with great value for money options. Anyway, have fun making up your own mind about which of these lenses is best for you. God bless and ciao for now.